Hey guys, tonight we're going all the way back, past the medieval manuscripts, past the pyramids, all the way to the moment when hooves echoed across a Roman road and the empire held its breath, waiting for news. You are a mule. Not an insult tonight. More of a promotion, honestly. You're a postal mule in the Roman Empire, part of the mighty cursus publicus. And your job is, well, to carry civilization on your back. Letters, orders, treaties, sometimes gossip, occasionally groceries. And like it or not, you're absolutely essential. Let's get one thing straight. You probably wouldn't survive this. Not just because of the physical demands, but because you lack the grit, the hooves, and frankly, the digestive efficiency of a Roman mule. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing where these sleepy stories wander. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning is cool. You blink the dust from your eyes and stomp your hooves as the stable boy buckles the saddle packs. The villa is already stirring. Torches out, torches in, someone shouting about dates, someone else trying to climb back into bed. You, however, have a job to do. You're carrying imperial mail today. One scroll sealed in red wax, 3 tagged with twine and marked for the East Gate, and 1 tucked in a waterproof pouch, meant only for a legate near the coast. You don't know what the scrolls say, and truly, you don't care. But the man tying them to your flank bows as he finishes. Good girl, he says. Ride safe. You're not a horse. You don't gallop. You move like a metronome, steady, tireless, unimpressed by drama. It's what makes you perfect for the job. The Roman Empire, at its height, was an impossible sprawl, from northern Britain to the sands of Egypt, from the cliffs of Hispania to the lush Anatolian valleys. And the whole thing depended on communication. Letters, orders, receipts, warnings, and those messages, more often than not, rode on your back. You pass through the gate just as the sun crests over the hills. The road is old, older than memory, but still smooth beneath your hooves. Laid stone by engineers who understood permanence. Other beasts pass you in the other direction. Oxen dragging carts, dogs yapping at chickens, goats being extremely goat-like. But you don't flinch. You've done this before. Today's route is relatively short. Only 20 miles to the next mancio or postal inn. There you'll rest, eat, and pass your load off to another mule, fresh and waiting. If the empire works as planned, the message continues even while you sleep. That's the beauty of the cursus publicus, the relay system designed under Augustus and refined under emperors like Hadrian. The Roman state created a literal roadmap for its ideas, within spaced roughly every 12 to 20 miles, full of fodder, food, and fresh feet or hooves. And while not every route was glamorous or even safe, it kept the whole empire pulsing, like veins feeding a massive body. Historians still argue whether the system was strictly for state use or if it occasionally, quietly, carried private messages for a price. Some think well-placed bribes got love letters through the network. Others think that's wishful thinking. Either way, what matters is this: the system worked. It moved armies. It moved grain. It moved laws. It moved lives. Your ears twitch as you pass under a fig tree. The air smells like dew and dust and breakfast cooking somewhere out of reach. You keep walking. A rider gallops past you, flanked by guards. His horse is frothing, eyes wide. He's probably a speculator, a courier for sensitive material. They move fast. You, however, move forever. They'll burn out. You won't. That's the thing about Roman mules. They lived long. Longer than horses, often. Some served for decades. There's even a bronze plaque, discovered centuries later, dedicated to one named Primigenia, who reportedly worked routes for over 30 years. Whether that's literal or legendary, who's to say? But it's a measure of the respect Rome had for its 4-legged postmasters. You step through a creek, pausing only to sniff the water before continuing. Your saddle creaks. Your flank itches. You flick your tail at a fly, with more precision than most swordsmen. This, you think, is the rhythm of empire. By midday, the road turns uphill. The sun climbs with you, slow and relentless. A child by the roadside points at you and whispers to her mother. "Is that the message?" she asks. The mother smiles. "That's the message's legs." You pause to let a cart pass, one wheel wobbling like it's had a rough morning. You take your time. You always do, because your job isn't to be fast. It's to arrive. And that, maybe more than anything, is why Rome trusted you. By the time the Mancio appears on the horizon, you're tired but calm. The innkeeper waves. The stable boy rushes out. You step into the shade and lower your head, letting the straps slip loose, the pouches tumble down, the messages passed along to the next leg of the journey. You nudge the stable boy until he brings you barley mash. And as you eat, the scrolls you carried, silent, sealed, are already galloping away behind someone else's hooves. You blink, you chew, you breathe. The empire never sleeps. But you've done your part. You wake with a sneeze. Your own, which is loud, undignified, and flings a bit of hay in every direction. The stable is dim, the air warm with the scent of grain, leather, and that mysterious earthy smell unique to mules. You stretch your legs. You're stiff but not sore. The journey begins again. The stable boy arrives with a bucket of water and a brush. He hums something off-key as he scrubs your flanks. You accept it all with a stoic blink. You're not pampered, but you are respected. You are part of a system older than he is, older than his father, maybe even older than this end. One mule out of many, but without you, nothing moves. Outside, a few travelers gather under the eaves, sipping watered wine and talking about border trouble. You catch snippets, raiders near the Rhine, uprisings in Britain, the usual empire-sized headaches. Nothing you haven't heard before. The world always buzzes. Your job is to carry that buzz forward. A new scroll is tucked into your pouch. The seal is gold this time, imperial. It carries weight, metaphorically and literally. The stable boy pats your shoulder. "North today," he says. "Fort at Vetera." You don't know Vetera, but you know roads. The via stretches out before you like a ribbon dropped by the gods, cobbled, worn smooth, hemmed by cypress and scrub. You fall in a pace, one hoof, then another. The rhythm is everything. This part of the empire is lush. Vineyards rolling like ocean waves, olive groves twisting skyward. Farmers pause their work to watch you pass, nodding politely. Children shout hello. One tries to feed you a figure. You ignore it. Dignity always. The sun climbs, and with it, the sense of summer. Hot stone, crushed herbs, the faint sweetness of ripening grapes. You press onward, mile after mile. You don't run. You endure. That's what Rome needed most, endurance. It wasn't all eagles and emperors in shiny helmets. It was this, the grind. The daily delivery of news, goods, and orders across terrain that could be friendly, hostile, or worse, indifferent. Historians still argue whether the cursus publicus was Rome's greatest invention. Roads, aqueducts, and legions get more press, but without the mail, without communication, Rome might have been little more than scattered city-states bragging in different directions. And at the center of it all, you, or someone very much like you. There are other animals, of course. Horses for speed, oxen for brute strength. But mules? Mules are the perfect compromise. Hardy, sure-footed, unimpressed by drama. If Roman logistics were a language, you were the punctuation, precise, necessary, often underappreciated. You crest a hill just as the sun hits its peak. Below, a river winding like silver thread, a bridge arching over it, and mutations, a relay station, marked by flags and the gleam of terracotta tiles. You pause to drink from a trough, your reflection rippling. The innkeeper here is older, with a beard like wool and fingers stained with ink. He checks your pouches, grunts, and hands your reins to a boy not much older than the fig giver earlier. This boy frowns when he sees the gold seal. Important, he mutters. You resist the urge to roll your eyes. Aren't they all? You're untethered, led to a patch of shade, offer a nosebag of barley and herbs. You chew slowly. Around you, the relay station hums with life. A scribe scratches notes into a tablet. Another mule arrives, panting. A rider dismounts, handing off a bag with a muttered curse. The cycle repeats. You close your eyes for a moment. The air hums with flies. Someone argues about missing tiles. The world turns. And then, your next handler arrives. This one smells like leather and vinegar. His sandals are too loud. He doesn't speak to you, but he checks the straps with care. That's enough. You're loaded up again, nudged toward the next stretch of road. This one cuts through pine forest, shaded and cool. You hear birds overhead, squirrels chattering, a distant flute. The world softens here. For a few miles, it almost feels like a vacation. But then, the road turns rougher. Stones slip under your hooves. The air thickens with humidity and gnats. You plod on, because that's what you do. You remember a winter trip once. Snow up to your belly, wind slicing through your coat. The scrolls then were wrapped in wool, tucked under a waxed hide. You carried them anyway. The garrison needed the orders. You got there. You always get there. The forest gives way to a clearing. You see a villa in the distance, smoke curling from its chimneys. But your stop isn't here. You keep walking. A cart blocks the road. A merchant arguing with a soldier about tolls. You wait, patient, impassive. Eventually they sort it. You move again. That's how the empire moves. One step at a time. Through heat, cold, mess, and miracle. And you're part of it. By the time the next end rises before you, the stars are just beginning to prick the sky. A lantern swings above the door. A woman in a blue tunic greets you, takes the reins, pats your flank. Rest well, friend, she murmurs. You do. The stable is quiet. The hay is dry. And as you drift to sleep, you know, tomorrow, another scroll will wait. Another road, another step, and you will take it, because Rome rides on your back. You rise before the sun, not because someone wakes you, but because you always do. Your body, conditioned by years of road and rhythm, knows when it's time to move. The stable is hushed and dim, lit only by a shaft of gray light creeping through the cracks in the wooden door. Your handler this morning is different, taller, leaner, with calloused hands and a quiet voice. He approaches without rush, which you appreciate. Too many people think mules need shouting. You don't. You need respect. And oats. He checks the straps, smooths your ears, murmurs something in Latin that probably means, let's get this over with, and off you go. The road today climbs, winding through the Apennines like a string pulled taut across a map. Your hooves strike stone with confidence. No slipping, no stumbling. Mules are built for this. Better than horses, more graceful than oxen. You're the quiet miracle of Roman engineering, wrapped in fur and stubbornness. The climb is slow. Pine trees crowd the edges of the path, scenting the air with resin. Far below, the valley stretches like a green quilt, dotted with farms, villas, the occasional temple. A hawk cries overhead. You ignore it. You stop briefly at a mountain pass station, where an old guard records your scroll's origin and destination in a wax tablet. He doesn't glance at you, but you're used to that. You're not here for glory. You're here to carry. And carry you do. The descent is trickier. The path narrows. The stones are loose. Your handler curses once as he slips, catching himself on your harness. You pause. Let him regain his footing. Then continue. This, right here, is why the Empire trusted you. You adapt. Back in Rome, some senator is probably bragging about how the legions keep order, how the laws keep peace, how the roads bind the provinces together like veins in marble. But you know the truth. It's you, and the thousands like you. Mules. Silent. Steady. Essential. You pass a shrine carved into the rock. Jupiter with a thunderbolt, looking smug. Your handler flicks a coin into the offering bowl. You snort. You've carried shrines heavier than that one. Around midday, you stop for a drink at a spring. The water is icy, rushing from a rock cracked long before Caesar was a gleam in his mother's eye. You drink deeply. So does your handler. Nearby, a merchant caravan rattles by, carts pulled by oxen, wheels squeaking, drivers half asleep. One waves. Another mutters something about bandits. You snort again. Bandits don't bother postal mules. Too much effort. Not enough reward. Besides, you're not alone. This route has watchtowers, mile markers, patrols. Rome watches her roads with the obsession of a parent watching a toddler near a well. Not because she's paranoid, because she knows how much she has to lose. Historians still argue whether the Roman postal system was more about military efficiency or bureaucratic vanity. But here, on the dusty edge of a nowhere trail, you can tell it's about connection, keeping far-flung outposts tethered to the beating heart of the empire, making sure no one forgets who's in charge and who's listening. You arrive at a relay station tucked against the cliff like it grew there. It's small but sturdy, stone walls, clay roof, a single olive tree twisting in a courtyard. The innkeeper greets you with a nod, takes your scroll pouch, checks the seal. He squints at your handler. Another dispatch from Capua? The handler grunts, "Urgent," a nod, and the scroll disappears inside. Someone else will carry it from here. That's the beauty of the system. No one mule has to do everything, just their part. You're led to a shady alcove, offered a feed bag of grain and dried fruit. You eat slowly. The sun presses warm through your coat. You doze, but lightly, always lightly. You dream, sometimes of fields, of races, of standing proud on a marble dais with laurels in your mane. And then you wake, stretch, and return to the road. The next handler smells like cheese and impatience. He doesn't speak, just checks the gear, tugs the strap too tight, and leads you down a new path. It's flatter here. Low hills, tilled earth, vineyards stretching like green fingers toward the sky. Farmers glance up as you pass. One salutes you with a hoe. You nod internally. You carry more than a message today. You carry routine, stability, the quiet, deliberate hum of a civilization that decided, one day, that forgetting was unacceptable, that information must move, that even a message about radish supply shortfalls is worth delivering. You pass a broken milestone. Someone has carved a crude face into the side, smiling eternally. A joke? A warning? You'll never know. You keep walking. A shepherd waves from a hillside, his goats staring with the blank suspicion only goats can muster. One tries to follow you. It loses interest quickly. By evening, you arrive at a village too small for temples, too tidy for trouble. The scribe's boy is waiting, hopping from foot to foot. He takes the pouch reverently and runs inside. Your job is done. For now, they stable you near a fig tree. The leaves rustle. The air smells of baked bread, fresh hay, and the cooling dust of the road. You rest, because tomorrow, the road continues. The scroll changes. The sun rises. And you will be there, hooves on stone, message in pouch, part of something greater than any monument or marble map. You're the link, the living thread, a Roman postal mule with a job that never ends. The morning greets you with the low warble of pigeons and the creak of stable doors opening to the scent of dew and manure. You stretch, tail flicking at an overly friendly fly, and listen to the quiet rhythm of a village waking. Your next scroll is already packed, sealed with wax and the faint scent of olive oil. A heavier pouch this time, meaning more weight on your back, but nothing unusual. You've carried tablets, wooden tablets with cords, even once a whole bronze casting plate that hummed in the heat like it had a grudge. Your new handler is young, too young, barely out of his teens, with wide eyes and sandals that still squeak. He pats you awkwardly, then drops the lead rope when you shuffle forward. You glance back. He scrambles to catch it. It's going to be a long day. You set off down the road that curls east through low hills and barley fields. The path is smooth, worn flat by generations of boots, hooves, and wheels. The stones glint where the morning light kisses them, and your shadow stretches beside you like a loyal companion. Along the way, you pass a traveling entertainer, a man with a painted face juggling figs and telling jokes to a pair of disinterested chickens. You pause as the boy handler tosses him a coin. The man bows dramatically, a fig bouncing off his nose. The chickens remain unimpressed. Further on, a cart blocks the road. Axle snapped, wheels sprawled like tired limbs. The driver waves you around. Your handler hesitates, unsure if you can navigate the narrow ditch beside the cart. You step down without issue. Balance is a mule's secret art. You don't even wobble. The boy grins like he taught you that. You let him believe it. You pause at a milestone shaped like an old spearhead, half buried in moss. It reads, MPLXII, Roma. 63 miles to Rome. You've walked that before, dozens of times. It's odd. You think, how humans count everything. Steps, miles, taxes, debt. As if numbers can make sense of the road. You've seen the system grow. You remember when these paths were narrower, the stations fewer. Now there are guidelines, regulations, inspections. Rome is obsessed with improvement, and nothing is safe from it. Not even mules. Historians still argue whether the cursus publicus, the imperial postal system, was designed for speed or for control. But anyone who's walked the path knows it was for both. Messages needed to reach the provinces swiftly, and Rome needed to know they got there. Today, you're carrying a letter for a governor. It's wrapped in wax cloth, bound tight with string, and bears a stamped seal that glows faintly gold in the sun. The boy tries not to peek. You know better than to ask. The midday sun turns the path into a slow bake. Your handler sweats through his tunic. You just keep walking, your pace steady, your mind empty in that meditative way only a well-trodden trail can offer. The boy tries to hum a tune. It's off-key. You snort. He stops. Later, you reach another way station, bigger than the last. Two stable boys meet you at the gate, and you're handed off without fanfare. The boy fumbles a farewell, scratching your ear like an apology. You nod just once. He did fine. Your new guide is older. Gruff. Smells of resin and horses. He checks your shoes, grunts approvingly, then slings a fresh pouch across your back. Another message, another destination. This time, the road leads through forest, tall cypress, and oak closing over the path like cathedral arches. The shade is welcome, but the silence is thicker. You hear only birdsong, the rustle of lizards, the occasional creak of a cart in the distance. The path narrows through an ancient stone bridge, carved with faded laurels and lichen-covered dates. A checkpoint sits at the far end, a bored soldier checking scroll seals and trade manifests. He glances at your handler's pass, nods, and lets you through. Bureaucracy, like road dust, clings to everything in the empire. Beyond the bridge, a gentle valley spreads out, sunlit and drowsy, with red-roofed farmhouses and smoking chimneys. Children wave from a garden wall, one holding a stick and pretending to direct traffic. You flick an ear in salute. A small shrine by the path features Mercury, god of travelers and messages. He's missing a hand, but his winged cap remains. Your handler tosses a pebble at the base. A humble offering, a practical one. You stop at a fountain, circular, shallow, rimmed with moss. The water is cool, sweet. You drink in long, slow gulps while the handler stretches his back. He looks at you with something like appreciation. Not love, not affection, but respect. You've earned it. As evening stretches across the valley, painting everything in gold and lilac, you reach your final station for the day. A brick inn with shuttered windows and a carved beam showing a lion and a fish in eternal disagreement. The scroll is signed for. The pouch handed over. Your job ends again. You're brushed down, watered, given a feed bag of oats and what smells like dried apple peel. Not bad. The stable is cool. Straw crackles under your hooves. Another mule is already resting in the stall beside yours. She flicks her tail and ignores you. You're used to that too. You lie down slowly, knees folding beneath you like collapsing scaffolds, and settle into the straw. You've walked nearly 20 miles today, carried the empire's business, kept the gears turning. And tomorrow, you'll do it again. Because that's what you do. You don't conquer. You don't rule. You carry. You endure. You remember the roads even when the signs are gone. And you always arrive. Dawn finds you already awake, the scent of wood smoke and roasting barley drifting in through the stable slats. Outside, The morning haze casts the courtyard in a buttery light, like someone spilled the sun across the flagstones. Your hooves stretch and flex as you rise, joints cracking faintly. Another day begins, not with fanfare, not with battle horns or laurel crowns, but with steady breath and a full feed bag. Your new handler is a courier from the central station, older, lean, and quiet, with a sun-lined face and the efficient gait of someone who's walked more roads than he's forgotten. He doesn't speak much, which suits you. You nod at each other like old acquaintances, then begin your journey. The scroll pouch today is lighter, but marked with a double seal. One wax red, one wax blue. That means it's diplomatic, sensitive, maybe even secret. The courier wears a small bronze pin shaped like an eagle feather, marking him as a tabularius of rank. You walk with a little more care. The road curves south now, through olive groves and past sleepy villas with faded frescoes and barking dogs. The courier chews a date and offers you one. You accept. It's tart and chewy, an unexpected treat. Mid-morning brings a slope of gravel that would slow a car to a crawl, but you take it in rhythm. 2 steps, pause, shift, wait. Mules know this dance better than soldiers, no sword drills. Even your courier grunts with quiet admiration. You pass a memorial stone, half buried, inscribed with a name long worn down by time. Beneath it lies a soldier, perhaps, or a courier like you. The only clue is a carved satchel etched beside the letters. You wonder how many lives these roads have seen. Historians still argue whether the Roman post was purely administrative or had deeper social impact, linking families, spreading culture, even shaping identity across the provinces. But on the ground, the truth is simpler. Messages change people. They close distances. They carry power, even the quiet ones, especially the quiet ones. You arrive at a rural villa just before noon. Columns rise from the dusty earth like pale ribs. A steward meets you at the gate, unfurls the scroll with practiced fingers, and scans the text. His expression tightens. He says nothing, but your handler raises an eyebrow. No reply needed, just acknowledgement. Something has shifted. Back on the road, the courier finally speaks. They say the governor in Capu is retiring. This might be the order. You flick an ear. Retirement, in Rome, is never simple. It's not just the end of service. It's the rebalancing of influence, the shuffle of patrons and rivals. Even from the stable, you've heard whispers. Grain shipments redirected, officials reassigned, statues quietly removed. You've carried the scrolls behind it all. A shepherd waves from a field of grazing sheep. His crook rests across his shoulders like a casual throne. He looks relaxed, free from the weight of empires. You envy him, briefly. Then again, he probably envies your steady rations and warm stable. The road narrows into a village where children chase a wooden hoop and vendors call out their wares in a lazy chant. You stop by a fountain where pigeons bathe with indifference, and your handler refills his water skin. He splashes your face with a grin. You bray once, not quite in protest. Then movement. The scroll pouch is gone. You both whirl. There a boy darting between carts, scroll in hand, eyes wide with mischief or desperation. Your handler curses and gives chase. You don't wait. You run. And here's the thing about mules. You may not be swift like a horse, but you are sure-footed. You are tireless, and you do not forget. You follow the smell of fear and dusty feet, weaving between pottery stalls and under archways. People shout. A woman drops a basket of figs. Someone yells, thief. You corner the boy behind a tannery. He freezes, eyes huge, chest heaving. Your handler catches up, panting and annoyed. He takes the scroll gently, checks the seals, intact. He looks at the boy. What? The answer comes quiet. It had my brother's name. You both pause. The handler glances at you, then back at the boy. Next time, he says ask. You resume your journey in silence. The scroll repacked, your steps slow and even. You don't speak human, but you understand enough. Names mean something. To carry a name is to carry a story, a bond, a burden. That's why you never rush. Why every scroll matters. Because someone, somewhere, waits for it. Afternoon stretches out like a lazy cat. The hills shimmer with cicadas. You climb a ridge overlooking the sea, distant and shimmering like a silver mirror. Your handler scratches your neck. Another 5 miles. You nod. You're not tired. This is what you do. The world may change. Scrolls to paper, roads to rails, emperors to memories, but the act remains. A message, a journey, a delivery, always onward. The sun lowers behind you as your hooves strike a familiar rhythm along the worn stones of the Via Latina. Shadows lengthen, casting strange shapes across the road. Half tree, half broken pillar, like the ghosts of monuments past. The scroll pouch now rests snug and sealed, its urgency tempered by the calm that follows a resolved chase. You pass a field where a pair of oxen chew sleepily beside an abandoned plow. A shepherd dozes under a fig tree, head tilted just so, mouth slightly open. The wind rustles his tunic, and he stirs only to swat at a fly. The world slows here, where nothing runs on empire time. But you do. You and your handler reach Mutations, a Roman postal relay station, just before dusk. The place is busy but hushed, the way temples are. Not out of reverence, but fatigue. Couriers come and go like bees, swapping scrolls, sipping watered wine, scratching at maps and sunbirds. A stable boy approaches. He's gangly and wide-eyed, probably new, and holds a bucket with more slop on his tunic than in the pail. Your handler waves him off gently. Not yet. You stamp once in agreement. You're not ready to stop. Just stretch. The station master, an older man with no teeth and too many opinions, waves your courier over to review the next leg. You eavesdrop. Yes, mules eavesdrop because every clink of scroll tube is another piece of puzzle. The discussion turns to weather. Storm clouds over the Apennines, swollen rivers near Beneventum, a washed-out bridge in Minturni. You hear it all and log it away. Your hooves may not be fleet, but they remember the feel of every incline, every loose stone, every slippery slope. Your memory is built into your muscles. Dinner is brief. Oats soaked in olive oil, a salt lick, a few leftover apple peels. Your handler dines on harder fare. Dried meat, crusty bread, one bite of something suspicious that earns a muttered curse. You rest under a fig tree near the boundary wall. The stars begin their slow reveal. That's what happens. A rider arrives in a blur, dusty, breathless, and clutching a broken message case. The seals are gone. The scroll inside, frayed and damp, holds only half a message. Panic flickers in the station. The rider mutters something about bandits near a forest road. He lost his guard, and worse, he may have lost the entire point of the message. Your handler frowns, glances at you, then says something quietly to the station master. He hands over your current scroll pouch. You blink. The station master opens it, reads the governor's transfer notice, and exhales slowly. Relief. The contents mirror the broken scroll. Same destination, same directive. And just like that, your backup copy becomes the official message. Your handler shrugs. Always carry twice. Mule logic. You don't gloat. You're a mule. But if you could smirk, you would. Historians still argue whether Roman redundancy, multiple copies, multiple routes, extra couriers, was a sign of paranoia or wisdom. You know better. You've seen rivers wash tablets away. Bandits burn sacks for warmth. Scrolls fall into soup pots, goat mouths, or the occasional philosophical debate about taxation. You've saved messages simply by existing. As night deepens, the station grows quieter. The remaining couriers roll up in cloaks, scratch their notes, mumble in dreams. Your handler sits beside you, scratching at a blistered heel and humming a song too old for words. You stare up at the stars. The constellations haven't changed since your first route. Still Orion there, still the hunter, striding bold across the night. He never tires. Neither do you. In the morning, a new courier takes the scroll pouch. A younger one, eager, sharp-cheeked, with polished sandals and eyes that haven't yet squinted through desert wind. Your handler pats your neck. Time for you to rest, old girl. You nudge him gently, but you obey. For once, the path ahead will belong to someone else. You stay at the station, watching the new courier ride out on a fresh mule. Lighter, quicker, but not smarter. Not yet. A week passes, then another. You're fed, groomed, admired by a group of novice couriers who whisper stories about the mule who outran a thief or the one who knew a forgery by smell. Some are exaggerated, some aren't. Then, one evening, your handler returns. He doesn't speak much, but he places a scroll pouch by your stall and brushes your ears with more attention than usual. You know what that means. Back on the road tomorrow. New message, new mission. You're older now. You walk a little slower. Your knees creak like temple doors, but your mind is sharper. You remember which station has the sour hay, which bridge rattles when it's windy, which scribes forget to seal their pouches unless reminded. You're the Postal Service embodied. Steady, stubborn, essential, and as the torches flicker in the night breeze and a cricket begins its song, you rest your head on your folded legs and drift into sleep. Tomorrow, the Empire will speak again, and you'll carry the reply. You rise before the sun. You always do, even when no bell chimes, even when no scroll calls. Your body wakes with the weight of purpose, muscle and memory stitched together like leather and thread. The clay nest may run without you now, but the road, it still waits. Today, you set out for Capua. It's not a glamorous route, but it's steady. A chain of outposts, well-fed villas, and the occasional roadside shrine where travelers leave figs or honey in exchange for safe passage. You pause at one. Your handler offers a piece of dried apple. The gods may not eat, but you do. The scroll pouch is lighter this time. No imperial directives or crisis dispatches. Just trade records, market tallies, a grain shipment invoice addressed to a family with 3 sons and too many olive trees. Mundane, but essential, because here's the truth. Empires aren't made of battles and bronze statues. They're made of lists, of names, of debts paid and promises written down. You're not hauling glory. You're hauling infrastructure, and infrastructure has a schedule. By mid-morning, the sun bakes the road into a shimmering ribbon. You keep a pace just shy of brisk, your hooves finding the rhythm between stones. A passing farmer waves. You recognize him. Last month's barley delivery, 2 jugs short, 1 apology carved into clay. He smiles sheepishly. You nod back. At the noon relay, a young stable girl refills your water and wipes your flanks with a damp cloth. She whispers, "Thank you," though she doesn't know why. But you do. Her family eats because couriers run, because messages arrive, because someone somewhere knew how much to plant and when. Historians still argue whether Roman logistical systems were truly decentralized. Some claim each province ran itself like a mini-empire. Others point to the efficiency of the cursus publicus, the state-run courier system that moved faster than most modern mail. You just know the schedule. You rest briefly in the shade of a cypress tree, watching a lizard do push-ups on a sun-warmed rock. Your handler stretches his legs, bites into a plum, curses the heat. You drink deeply, shake off flies, and listen to the quiet shuffle of another courier mule arriving from the opposite direction. You pass like ships. A nod, a glance. 2 cogs in the same machine. The afternoon brings dust. It always does. The southern roads are less traveled, less maintained. But you know every dip and rut. Every route that snakes across the path like it's reaching for news. By the time you reach Capua's outskirts, the sky has gone amber. The city gates are open. The guards barely glance at you. A known face. A known pace. Inside, the roads widen. Market stalls bloom like bright cloth mushrooms. Children chase each other between carts. Bakers shout their crusts into the air. And everywhere are pouches. Tablets, sealed and slung and stacked in baskets. The city breathes receipts. You deliver your scrolls to the station clerk, a bored-looking man with ink on his wrists and a love of sign. He checks your seal, nods, and files the records away without ceremony. But you don't mind, because the moment the pouch leaves your back, you feel it. A shift. The Empire just got a little more connected, a little more whole. And you helped. You slow your pace now, winding higher through a series of switchbacks carved into a forested slope. Pine and juniper thick around you, their needles carpeting the path in soft browns and greens. The mule's breath puffs visibly in the cool air. You've entered a different part of the empire, northern, mountainous, less Mediterranean sun, more alpine drizzle. You made it into the Alps, or as the Romans knew them, the Alpes Graei. The very phrase once inspired both awe and dread. Roman engineers did eventually build passes and roads. Bridges of stone and log, switchbacks so tight they looked like snail shells, but even they couldn't tame the weather. Or the mules. Especially not the mules. And let's be honest, this is where your job gets kind of dangerous. You squint into the mist. The trail narrows ahead, clinging to a rock face, and for a second, your stomach flips. Your mule doesn't flinch. She steps forward as if she'd walked this route in a dream. Maybe she has. Maybe you both have. You're carrying dispatches from Augusta Praetoria to Mediolanum, today's Aosta to Milan. But between those two cities lies enough elevation change to pop your ears, freeze your boots, and test your faith in imperial logistics. The Cursus Publicus was designed for speed, yes, but not at the cost of survival. There were protocols. One protocol, way stations, known as mansions and mutations. These were relay points for changing mules, feeding riders, and warming half-frozen toes. You arrive at one, just before dusk, a low, stone-walled rest station with a smoking hearth and one grumpy, stable hand named Rufus. Why is it always Rufus? He scowls at your mule's hooves, gestures to the slush-covered floor, and mutters something about another Bloody Hill courier. You smile politely and pretend not to hear him call your beast thick as amphor clay. She probably understands Latin better than he does. Here, you warm up and dry your messages. Scrolls of parchment and wax-coated tablets, none of which fare well in wet packs. You dry each message by the fire, careful not to warp them. You refill your pouch. You eat something that might be cheese. Outside, it starts to snow. Not heavily, not yet, but enough to catch in your hair and make the world go quiet. You and the mule press on the next morning. It's beautiful in that indifferent, snow in your eyebrows sort of way. The Alps don't care about your timetable. The mule? She's focused, head down, tail swishing gently. Her pace is slow but solid. That's the key here, endurance, not elegance. Historians still argue whether the Alpine routes were managed directly by the Cursus Publicus or overseen locally by client governors and army units. But someone must have been in charge of replacing signs, carving new switchbacks after rockfalls, feeding travelers too frozen to protest their bill. It was a bureaucracy built on gradients. You pass carved mile markers, Roman numerals half buried in frost. You cross bridges built by hands you'll never know. You squint into the wind and see a flicker of movement. Another courier, heading the opposite direction, wrapped in wool, barely visible against the slate-gray sky. You nod as you pass. No words needed. Just mules. Just mission. One curious fact. Roman mules in these regions were sometimes fitted with tiny hoof shoes, proto-snow cleats made of iron or bronze. Not every beast got them, but the fancy ones did. You reach down and check yours. Just plain iron. No bling. You do keep a charm, though. Woven into your belt. A knot of red thread and an old coin pressed into wax. Superstition? Of course. But when you're dangling above a ravine with nothing but a four-legged accountant carrying Caesar's gossip to lean on, you cling to every scrap of luck you can get. And through all of this, mud, frost, muttered curses, the mule keeps going. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't demand glory. She just walks, one hoof print after another, until the path levels out, the air softens, and the first vineyards of the plains below come into view. You cross the Alps. You made it, and so did she. The land flattens out, and you almost don't know what to do with yourself. After days of crag and cliff and switchback, the rolling hills of northern Italia feel suspiciously kind. Too kind, maybe. You half expect a new disaster to come barreling around the bend. Bandits, bureaucracy, or maybe another argument over pickled lentils. But for now, it's peaceful. The mule relaxes, ears flicking at birdsong instead of echoing avalanches. You pass olive groves and fields of millet, and the dirt underfoot gives way to honest Roman paving. Flagstones so old they've been polished smooth by 1,000 carts before you. This is where the cursus publicus shines. Roads laid like arteries from Rome outward, with mile markers, ditches, drains, and those famously annoying toll checkpoints. Oh yes, there were tolls. Don't let anyone tell you Roman roads were entirely free. They might have been built by the state, but the state also had an uncanny knack for asking you to pay twice. Once in labor, once in coin. You arrive at one such toll marker just after noon. The man in the booth squints at your tablet, sees the imperial stamp, and waves you through. Courier, he grumbles. Lucky mule. She swishes her tail proudly. Ahead lies Mediolanum, modern Milan. In Roman times, a strategic powerhouse, military base, political seat, and occasional imperial vacation spot. Its roads converge like threads on a loom. And that means this isn't just another town. This is a hub. And hubs are where messages multiply. You arrive at the station areas, the city's main relay office, and you're met with what can only be described as postal bedlam. Couriers everywhere. Mduras Munchingdai. A clerk yelling something about ink shortages. It smells like sweat, wet parchment, and pure civic ambition. You hand off your dispatches and are immediately handed new ones. Some are sealed in wax, others tied with dyed cords. One has a ribbon. You raise an eyebrow. It's from a senator, the clerk explains. He likes ribbons. You stow in your pouch. Alongside it, a small, wooden tag with a coded emblem. That means classified. You don't read it. You're not supposed to, but you do wonder what it says. Orders? Gossip? A request for fig jam from someone's mother? Historians still argue whether Roman couriers ever peeked into sensitive documents. Probably. Who wouldn't be curious? But the curses had a code of honor, even if it wasn't always followed to the letter. Trusted couriers were expected to deliver messages sealed and untouched, and mules, of course, never gossiped. Speaking of mules, your companion gets a checkup from the city vet. No, seriously, bigger stations had animal medics. She gets her hooves checked, a drink of something mineral-rich, and a pat on the neck. The vet, an older man with a face like dried fruit, nods approvingly. She's got years left in her, he says. You blink. Years. Easily. These mules are bred to outlast emperors. And that, right there, is the twist in your journey. Because until now, you've thought of this job as temporary. A few years in the saddle, a few hundred messages. Then you'd move on, maybe to a desk job, or a tavern, or a quiet corner of the empire where no one needs anything urgently transported. But your mule? She's in it for the long haul. And so, maybe are you. So you clean your gear, rest for the night, and set out again at dawn. This time heading south toward Ravenna. More swamps, more road, but now something shifted. The weight of the message pouch feels different. Not heavier, just more permanent. You pass another courier heading north. He's young, new. His mule looks annoyed already. You wave. He waves back. And then you do something unexpected. You tell him a joke. What did the mule say when the scroll got wet? He stares. You grin. You've ruined my hoof notes. He groans. The mule snorts. Success. Because that's what you're learning. The cursus isn't just about speed. It's about people. And mules. And mud. And bad jokes passed along back roads like currency. And somewhere down that long road, maybe your name will be remembered. Not carved in marble, but scrawled on a stable wall. This was Firebringer. He always paid for oats and told the worst jokes. Honestly, you take it, because that's the courier life. And you're starting to realize you wouldn't trade it for anything. You wake to the smell of damp straw and the soft sound of your mule snoring. Yes, snoring. She does that sometimes, especially after a long stretch on paved roads. It's oddly comforting. You stretch, brush the sleep from your eyes, and rise from your blanket on the station floor. Another day, another message. You saddle up and ride into the misty fields outside Ravenna, where the marshes breathe fog into the morning light. It's quiet, too quiet. You half expect the ghosts of old emperors to rise from the swamps, and demand their correspondence. Instead, a heron flaps overhead, and your mule startles only slightly. Ravenna's importance has shifted over time. At one point, it was the Western Empire's capital, a fact many modern travelers forget. Safe from sieges, surrounded by marshland, and studded with mosaics that look like the gods themselves sat for portraits. But you're not here for sightseeing. You're here for the fleet. Ravenna has a port, and that port means options. Because sometimes the Roman postal system didn't run on hooves and dust. Sometimes it ran on sails. You dismount at the dockyard, scroll in hand. The harbor master takes one look at your mule and waves you over. "Courier," he asks. "Still," you reply. "Need a boat." It's not a question. It's a statement of bureaucratic certainty. You hand over the scroll, sealed in lead and wax. A naval courier, barefoot, sunburned, takes it with a nod and vanishes toward the nearest trireme. You watch the sails billow and realize you've just passed a message into another part of the Empire's bloodstream, a saltier part, and now you wait. That's the hidden truth of the curses. For all its urgency, it's full of waiting. Messages that can't ride must float. Roads blocked by snow or sabotage require rerouting. You spent more hours sitting in inns than riding highways. It's not glamorous, but it's part of the job. You find a shaded wall and sit beside your mule. She flops down with all the grace of collapsed tent. You both breathe in the scent of seaweed, fish, and old oil. It's not unpleasant, just vivid. You think back to earlier messages, the ones that made you nervous, the sealed ones, the ones that came with warnings or codes or odd weights that made you suspect something other than parchment was inside. You've never opened one, mostly out of fear, not of punishment, but of knowing too much. Historians still argue whether Roman couriers were truly ignorant of what they carried or simply masters of polite disinterest. Some scrolls, after all, carried orders for executions. Others, declarations of love. The cursus didn't discriminate. It delivered. And so do you. You glance at your mule, who is currently licking a crate for no discernible reason. She's not a spy, you mutter, unless she's very good at it. You both nap under the same striped awning until someone taps your foot. A merchant. He's got a pouch of documents and a worried look. "Heading back inland?" he asks. "Eventually. Can I hire you?" You pause. The cursus is for government dispatches. Personal requests are frowned upon, unless, of course, they're tied to an official matter. The line blurs sometimes. You look at the pouch. It's got a magistrate's mark. Close enough. You nod, and he slips it into your satchel. "Thank you," he says, and he means it. You ride inland again by sunset. The breeze carries gull cries and the first hint of summer. You pass a group of pilgrims, 2 grain carts, and 1 goat that refuses to move for anything less than divine intervention. You arrive at a small mutatio, a way station with hay, water, and a fire that someone forgot to put out. It's cozy. You drop your gear, water your mule, and stare at the fire for a while. A man sits beside you, fellow courier, by the looks of him. Older, scarred. His tunic's patched a dozen ways, and his stylus is carved with notches, one for every year in the field. He doesn't talk much, but before bed, he says, "How long you been riding?" You tell him. He nods. "You remember the first?" You blink. "Message." He smiles. "No." Day you realize this wasn't just work, that it was you. You think, and then you remember the day a little girl ran up to you in a village you'd never visited and said, "You're the message man. My papa says you bring good news." You remember that. You still carry that. And as you drift to sleep beside the fire, mule snoring again at your side, you think maybe that old courier is right. This isn't just what you do. It's who you become. The next morning arrives with a squeaky sunrise and a stubborn blister on your heel. You patch it with a scrap of linen, chew a bit of leftover barley cake, and swing into the saddle. Your mule huffs like she also needs coffee. You sympathize. Today's route is different. You're heading up into the hills toward a fortress post where letters rarely come and couriers even more rarely volunteer to go. It's remote, windy, and known for 2 things: goats with attitude and soldiers with none. But the message in your pouch is urgent, stamped with the Emperor's insignia. You don't ask what it says. You never do. But the weight of it presses against your ribs with every step. The road narrows as you climb, winding between olive trees and tumbled stones that once lined proud Roman paths. You ride past shepherds who barely look up, their faces lined like old bark. They see you, though. They always do. The mule, at least, gets a nod. By midday, you pause near a broken aqueduct. The wind sings through its hollow bones. You sit in its shade and let your mule graze on the patchy grass while you stretch your arms and sketch lazy spirals in the dust with your stylus. The message can wait 5 minutes. Even Empire understands heat stroke. Historians still argue whether the Roman state truly supported its couriers with full hospitality or whether many of the outposts just borrowed food and shelter from nearby locals. Either way, you've learned not to expect luxury. A place to sleep and a bite of cheese is considered generous. You climb again, higher now. The sky sharpens, and your mule's breath comes in short huffs. You pass a milestone that's been toppled by time, its carved letters barely legible. To all roads, one purpose. You don't know who chiseled that, but it feels right. The fortress appears like a ghost. Stone walls crouched against the cliffside, banners limp in the wind. You knock at the gate with the base of your stylus and wait while someone shouts in Latin that might be words or just creative grunting. Eventually, the gate opens. A soldier peers out, young, sunburned, and squinting. Courier, you nod. He opens the gate wider. You step through. Inside, the fortress is as quiet as a tomb. Most of the garrison is away, the man explains. Only a few guards remain. You hand over the message to the officer in charge, a man with the posture of a broom and the eyes of someone who hasn't seen news in a year. He takes it with trembling fingers. You came all the way up here for this? He asks. You shrug. It's my job. He shakes his head. No one else would have bothered. He breaks the seal and reads in silence, then nods slowly, orders to rotate out the garrison. Finally, you smile. It's a good message this time. He clasps your shoulder, firm, grateful. You don't linger. Couriers never do. As you descend, the sun drops behind the hills, painting the sky in saffron and wine. Your mule walks slower now, but steady. Always steady. You reach the valley as stars begin to blink into view. Somewhere a flute plays, soft, off-key, probably drunk. It's beautiful anyway. You think about the soldiers, about the ones waiting to go home, about the ones still waiting for orders, and about the mule beside you, who has never once questioned where or why you go, only followed. And then, because you're sentimental and no one's around, you lean over and whisper, "You're the best part of this job." She grunts, which you take as agreement. You reach a small village just before full dark. No inn, just a barn and a friendly woman who offers you lentil stew and a dry place to sleep. You don't ask for more. That night, as you curl up on straw beside your mule, the pouch lighter, your legs sore, and your heart oddly full, you realize every mile matters. Not just for the Empire, but for the people. Because messages aren't just ink and orders. They're change. They're hope. They're the future, arriving one hoofstep at a time. You wake up sore. Not the, "Oh no, I slept funny," kind of sore. This is the deep down, mule seat, uphill miles, ancient Roman road kind of sore. Your knees creak. Your back pops. Your mule sneezes directly into your face. It's going to be a good day. You brush off the straw, splash your face with cold water from a nearby cistern, and thank the village woman with a nod and a wedge of copper. She smiles, points to the west, and says something about a shortcut that is almost definitely not one. Still, you take it. This route skirts the foothills, weaving through patches of rosemary and wild fennel. The air smells like soup and dust. The sky stretches wide and blue above you, the kind of blue that makes you squint and think of gods. Maybe even write poetry, if you had time, which you don't. You're heading toward a crossroads post today, a kind of relay station where couriers meet, exchange messages, trade gossip, and sometimes wrestle over whose mule kicked whose pack opened first. These are your people. Weird, gruff, covered in ink smudges and saddle calluses. You arrive mid-morning to find a familiar scene. For other couriers sitting on overturned amphorae, sharing figs and arguing about whose route is hardest. One of them spots you and waves. "Still alive, mule man?" "Barely," you say, dismounting. You join them, gratefully accepting a fig and some goat cheese. The talk turns, as always, to absurdities. A senator who requested a love letter delivered with rose petals sealed inside. A donkey who ate a tax notice and was fined in turn. A message that took 3 weeks to reach a villa 5 miles away because someone got lost and followed sheep. Historians still argue whether these roadside courier exchanges were officially sanctioned or tolerated off the books. What they all agree on is this: without these networks of riders and walkers and animal wranglers, Rome's vast empire would have collapsed into whispers. One courier pulls out a message meant for you. Someone in Rome wants a reply, and you're heading that way. You take it, tuck it in your pouch, and promise to deliver it. You don't ask who it's for. You never do. You rest your mule under a tree while the others talk routes and rainfall. A few of them head out again. You linger. Let the shade cool your neck. Let the silence sink in. You think about the roads. The Romans didn't just build them. They obsessed over them. There's a whole saying about it. All roads lead to Rome. But you're starting to think that's not quite right. All roads lead from Rome, too. Messages travel outward. News, orders, decrees. But things come back in return. Reports, warnings, insights from the edge of empire. And you're the bloodstream in that vast body, pulsing life from toe to head and back again. A woman arrives with a cart full of amphorae and asks if any of you can deliver a message. It's short, hastily written, and sealed with beeswax. Her brother's stationed at a distant watchtower. She wants him to know that their father's name has been cleared. She wants him to know he can come home. You tuck the message into your pouch, not because it's official, because it's necessary, and because someone needs to know they've been forgiven. You ride again. The path is wide now, well-paved, bordered by cypress trees and mile markers carved so deep they might as well have been punched into the earth with Jupiter's own fist. You stop at one and run your fingers along its numbers. Mile 89. You come a long way, not just today, but from where you began. You used to be one of those kids shouting nonsense in alleys, throwing rocks at carts, and dreaming of adventure. Now, you carry the adventure in your pouch, and it's heavier than it looks. You pass a patrol. Soldiers nod at you. One of them salutes. It's weird, but you nod back. By the time the sun dips low again, you reach a villa with a red-tiled roof and a gate like a smile. A boy waits out front with a wax tablet in his hands. He runs up when he sees you. "Are you the courier?" You nod. He grins. "They said you'd come." You don't ask who they are. Doesn't matter. You hand him the message. He clutches it like treasure. And just like that, your work here is done. You ride a little farther to a nearby way station. Just a wooden shed and a bowl of lentils on a stool. But it's enough. You sit beside your mule, watching the stars prick the sky. She lays down beside you, and you lean against her warmth. The fireflies come out. You think, not bad for a day of hauling feelings across half an empire. And the best part? You'll do it again tomorrow. The next morning, you rise early again. Not because anyone's forcing you, but because something in your bones wakes you now, tuned to the rhythm of the road. You stretch, feed your mule a handful of grain, and check the pouch for its precious contents. Still there, still dry. You mount up and head east, toward the hills that look purple in the morning mist. The road curves, wobbles, straightens again. Romans love straight lines, but sometimes the landscape refuses to cooperate. You respect that. As you ride, you think back to your first delivery. You were nervous, sweating, afraid to smudge the ink or forget the address. The mule had more experience than you did. Now, you barely think about it. You've delivered tablets to mountain shrines, scrolls to libraries carved into cliffs, letters to desert garrisons that smelled like regret and boiled onions. Today's delivery is lighter. A personal message, sealed in green wax, tucked into a strip of linen to keep it cool. Someone's birthday, you think, or a poem. You don't open it, of course, but you can guess. After this long, You know the weight of news versus affection. As you pass a cluster of travelers, merchants, soldiers, one oddly silent priest, you realize something. Your mule is famous. A child gasps and points. That's her. That's the old one. Your mule flicks her ear and keeps walking. Is she the one who made it to the Alps? You shrug. She's made it everywhere. And it's true. She's the sort of creature who belongs in mosaics. The kind of legend that tavern keepers exaggerate stories about. Carried Caesar's last order. Saved a legion from starvation. Once kicked a tax collector into the Tiber. Only some of those are true. You're not saying which. You stop for water at a shaded stream. She drinks deeply, ears twitching. You sit nearby, pulling a fig from your pouch and breaking it in half. The sun filters through the trees in gold strips, and for a moment, it's quiet again. You wonder how long she has. Not to be morbid, just honest. She's old. The kind of old that doesn't make noise unless it has to. Her knees don't bend so much as suggest the idea of bending. But her eyes are clear. Her step is steady. She'll let you know when it's time. And you'll listen. Historians still argue whether Roman postal mules were ever truly retired, or just reassigned. Some sources suggest they were put to pasture with honors. Others say they became cargo haulers. You like to think there was a field somewhere full of worn-out mules, napping in the sun with laurels around their necks. You ride on. The hills roll past, dotted with fig trees, and sheep who look like they've got union contracts. A shepherd waves. You wave back. Everyone waves at the mule. You pass an old milestone. It's cracked, half buried, its numbers worn to whispers. But you recognize it. You passed it years ago, your first long route. You stop, dismount, and dust it off with your sleeve. Mile 143. You carve a small mark in the stone. Just yours. Just so you know you were here again. That's the thing about this job. It's not just about the destination. It's about the repetition. The familiar becoming sacred. The road becoming story. You ride into a small village just before dusk. The people are gathered in the square. Someone is playing a flute badly. A child is dancing like a drunk goat. You tie the mule under a fig tree and hand off the message to a young woman with sharp eyes and a stronger handshake than most centurions. She gives you a jar of something sweet in return. Not official, she says, but earned. You nod. You sit on the fountain's edge and drink something that tastes like fermented joy and bees. You laugh when a mule tries to eat a laurel wreath someone placed on her head. You realize something then. She's not just famous. She's beloved. She's a symbol now of endurance, of loyalty, of slow, stubborn progress. And you're the one who walks beside her. That night, you sleep in the village barn, hay beneath you, mule snoring beside you. You dream of maps, not the kind drawn on parchment, the kind carved into memory. The next morning, you'll ride again, and again after that, until the road runs out, where your mule tells you it's time. But not today. Today, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. The wind picks up on the road south, carrying the scent of olives, dust, and something vaguely citrusy. Probably a merchant's experiment gone wrong. You adjust your cloak and pat your mule's neck. She grunts, slow and steady, as if reminding you, one hoof at a time. You've taken this road a dozen times before, but today it feels different. Not in a bad way, just softer. As though the land knows your pace and is adjusting its breathing to match. You pass a small shrine by the roadside, weather-worn, half swallowed by ivy. A few coins glint in the stone bowl. Someone's left a ribbon tied to a branch nearby. You dismount, kneel, and offer a sliver of barley cake from your pack. Not for the gods, for the road, for the promise of smooth paths and manageable inclines. The mule just watches, unimpressed. Later, you stop to deliver a tax record. Sealed, signed, and somehow heavier than it should be for something made of clay. The magistrate doesn't thank you. He rarely does. But his daughter hands you a painted stone with a little mule on it. Big ears, bright eyes. Yours. You keep in your satchel. You ride past vineyards now. Rows of vines curl like lines on a scroll, green and whispering. You think about all the things you've carried that weren't just written down. Hopes, regrets, secrets tucked into folded wax. Some messages never made it. Lost to rain, mudslides, or sheer bad luck. But most did, because you made sure. Historians still argue whether Roman couriers were simply logistics machines or subtle agents of influence, whether their true job was to deliver messages or shape them. You know this, when someone writes something down and sends it far away, they're doing more than communicating. They're trusting, and trust weighs more than any wax seal. You stop at a way station to rest. A young scribe runs out to greet you, wide-eyed, ink-stained, barely taller than a mule's saddle. "You're the one with the legend mule," she gasps. You nod. The mule sneezes. Is it true she once outran bandits? You smirk. They were very slow. She giggles and shows your practice tablet. Wedges wobbly, sealed too deep, but the effort's there. You hand her one of her blanks, pressed clean, unmarked, and tell her to start again. First wedge should feel like confidence, you say. She nods solemnly, and you feel weirdly like a professor. You sleep that night under the stars, back against the wall of the way station, mule nearby, chewing something you hope isn't vital. The stars spin slowly above. You count the constellations not by name, but by route. The big loop, the forked road, the crush cart. You wake to hooves, not yours, not your mule's. A patrol. They recognize you immediately. One raises a hand. "Messenger," he says, and his voice carries the weight of centuries. You nod in return. You wonder if they know how many armies have marched this same route. How many scrolls have passed from emperor to general to foot soldier? How many lives have turned on a letter's arrival? You do, because you were there, not for the big battles, but for the quiet ones. The ones where a grain shipment made it just in time, where a love letter reached its reader before they gave up hope, where a mule and a tired rider showed up with the past written in clay and the future sealed in wax. The next town is celebrating something. You're not sure what. A harvest? A saint? A really good wine barrel? Doesn't matter. There's music. There's firelight. There's a feeling of things being okay, if only for tonight. You sit by the fire with locals, sharing stories. They ask about the road, about the mule, about the strangest thing you've ever delivered. You think, then say, "A small pot of tears." They blink. Ceremonial. You add, "I think." Later, you dance. Badly, but you're invited. And that's what matters. The mule? She watches from the shadows, chewing, judging. At midnight, you step away from the crowd and walk a short path to the town's overlook. Below, the valley glows faintly with torchlight and moonshine. It stretches far, hills, roads, rivers, all connected. It hits you then, this is what you've built. You, and all the other scribes and messengers and mule hoof carriers of time. A web of memory, of trust, of proof. You whisper, "We held it together. Not alone, but enough." And tomorrow, you ride again, because somewhere, someone still waits for a message. The morning after the festival greets you with stiff legs, a warm nose from your mule nudging your ear, and the faint taste of last night's celebratory wine still lingering like a pleasant rumor. You stretch, pop your back, and smile at the sunrise curling over the hills like melted gold. It's your last run for a while, just a simple message to a villa outside the city. You saddle up, pack the last of your figs, and wave to a baker who offers you a roll in exchange for a joke. You tell him the one about the goat and the barley again. He groans. You both laugh. The road curves gently west. Trees lean over the path like they're eavesdropping. The air smells of rosemary, hoof dust, and the promise of a quiet day. You think about how far you've traveled, not just in leagues, but in years. From apprentice scribe to lead courier to something else entirely. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped delivering messages and started becoming one. You pass an old milestone, half buried, worn smooth. You remember carving your initials into the back of it years ago. Just 3 letters, tiny and crooked, still there. A boy herding sheep jogs beside you for a bit, peppering you with questions. Is it true you saw the emperor's seal? You nod, and that your mule doesn't fear lightning? She snorts at it. Do you have a sword? No, you say, just for seats. He makes a face, clearly unimpressed. But later, when he waves goodbye, he salutes you like a centurion. You reach the villa by noon. White stone walls, wide olive groves, a faint breeze carrying the sound of someone practicing the flute very badly. You hand over the scroll. The steward thanks you, and you wait, as is custom, for a return message. None comes. Instead, the steward hands you a coin. You blink. No return. He shrugs. Sometimes, silence is the reply. Fair enough. You head back down the road, coin in pouch, thoughts drifting. About all the times you carried something heavier than it seemed. A word. A name. A hope. You once ferried a letter from a dying man to his estranged brother. The letter just read, "Come." You never knew if the brother made it in time, but you carried the hope anyway. Historians still argue whether the Roman postal system, cursus publicus, was a tool of power or a gift of connection, whether it spread empire or spread understanding. You've come to believe both, because empires fall, but messages last. A breeze stirs your hair, your mule flicks an ear. A bird hops beside the path, watching you with a sideways stare, as if to say, "Still going?" Yes, still going. Back in town, a group of young scribes are practicing under a fig tree. One waves you over. We're debating the best wedge stroke for urgent. Thoughts? You squat beside them, take the stylus, and show them a slight curve, like wind, like movement, like something that can't wait. They nod, impressed. You're flattered, despite yourself. Then one of them asks, "Are you retiring soon?" You glance at your mule, at the dust on your boots, at the loop-sealed satchel on your hip. "No," you say, "just slowing down." You visit the clay nest that evening, now 3 rooms larger, with color-coded tags and a dedicated shelf for festival receipts. You light a lamp, check the humidity jars dry just right, and walk the rows. So many tablets, so many voices. You place your latest one gently on a shelf. No return message. Accepted payment. Mule unimpressed. You add a dot for emphasis, a small flourish. Then you sit and breathe, because you've done your part. The mule nudges you. Time to go. You grab your cloak, your stylus, and your coin pouch. You leave behind your name, on shelves, in grooves, in habits copied by scribes who will never know you. And you step into the night, under stars, along familiar roads, still carrying what matters. Word count, 1,091, wind down, 300 words. So now, as the story slows, you feel your breath do the same. The roads have quieted. The mule rests. The lamp in the clay nest flickers lower. The last of the barley rolls have gone cold on the table, uneaten, but not unloved. Outside, the breeze is calmed. The stars blink softly overhead, like distant cinders in a hearth too vast to name. You listen to the silence, to the memory of hoofbeats on stone, to the hush that follows a well-told tale. You've traveled through a world made of messages, of trust carved into clay and sent across dusty plains. You've walked with an ordinary mule who outlived expectations and outpaced time, not by galloping, but by enduring. And maybe that's the real secret. Not to hurry, not to shine, but to carry what matters. For as long as you can, with care, with pride. And when the day ends, to leave a mark that tells the next traveler, this road was walked. This weight was borne. This life was lived. So breathe deep. Let the quiet fold around you. Let the fire in the distance fade to ember. Let the story settle. Because you were there, you remembered, and someone will remember you. Good night.